Hey guys, Aussie Expat here. Just wanted to say I'm off the blacklist because I was able to get one of these. Okay, so not too long ago I said I was basically on the blacklist. I wasn't able to acquire Daytonas or GMTs anymore. And I basically put that down to, higher qualifications or restrictions that I no longer qualified for. And, as I said in a couple of videos back, I think obviously the market's changing, but things might be getting slightly easier on the ADs in terms of getting some of these pieces. Now, not vastly easier, but certainly clearly I slipped back into the window of being able to acquire harder to get pieces again. So obviously I already had a Panda Daytona, got this Boxing Day last year, and at that time I qualified. Then I slipped out of qualification for some reason, and then I got one of these. So literally a few weeks back I was looking at what I was going to do for my wife and I. We have our 10-year anniversary coming up in January, and I was really thinking about what we could get that would be, suitable for such a milestone. And I was thinking romance. It really has to be precious metal. And if I'm going to get something precious metal, I really think the Daytona is the best piece in Rolex's lineup for precious metal. The other clear obvious ones are like the Day-Date or something like that. But this is actually for my wife. And so the Daytona being a smaller watch than say the Day-Date 40 or a Submariner or a GMT is a lot more suitable. I did take my wife into the AD to take a look at some of their stock that did have gold Daytonas, and specifically was really looking at the Sundust dial, but in person it just wasn't really clicking for her. She just wanted something with a little bit more contrast. But even at that time, and this is like basically 3 weeks ago, at that time, I was basically told that, I don't really qualify for getting these, yet alone, I asked for 2 so that we could exchange them. But, we were sort of left sort of umming and ahhing about exactly where we were sitting, whether or not such a thing was possible. Now I've got like fingerprints all over this. I should have done a little bit. I'll do a little bit more of an in-depth video, but this is kind of sort of more of a market update, or at least a market update to me. And yeah, things are getting slightly easier. I always predicted that precious metal was going to be, a little bit softer, because historically, say if you asked for one of these in say 2018, you would have gotten it. Now, maybe you would have still needed some qualifications, but certainly not, huge amounts of soft purchases to be able to get precious metal. Certainly today, you typically do need to get a very good account history and purchases to be able to qualify for being able to get one of these allocations. And I'm lucky enough that I qualify again, and was able to see this one. Now, we had not really looked at this dial much before, but it is actually the only dial in the Everose that actually offers significant contrast, a classic black and gold look. This is what people refer to as, well, at least I do, as to sort of like an homage to a Paul Newman dial, which is the John Player Special, the JPS dial. So if you see the JPS dial, if I can just bring this up here, the JPS dial is a gold watch with these gold subdials and concentric circles. And that's what you've got on this watch. Now, whether or not you pay attention to any of these nicknames, I mean, there's certainly nothing official about, a Paul Newman Daytona, Paul Newman dial, but this has those concentric circles and that, black and gold, very classic look. Now, it doesn't have the subdials that have the sort of the Art Deco look, but overall it does offer that contrast that my wife was looking for. Now, when I showed it to my wife, you know, I didn't say anything about it, right? This isn't about collecting, quote unquote. This is about whether or not it gets your heart racing. And so we raced down to the store. I said, look, I really don't know. This really just depends on whether or not my wife, whether this really gets her heart racing, whether or not she's excited about getting it. And yeah, suffice to say, when this came out of the tray, this was a no-brainer. It's gorgeous. Geez, I'll go into detail a little bit more in terms of like looking at this watch in particular. So yeah, qualifying for Daytonas again. I originally thought that for our anniversary we should both exchange a gold Daytona to each other. Seeing this in person, it's really too beautiful for a schmuck like me. And I'm not sure if I'll aim to get a gold Daytona for myself at this point. It's a very fine watch, and I'm just not sure if I'm mature enough to really sport something as gorgeous as this. Certainly my wife is far more fashionable than me to be able to sport something like this. I thought I'd like to highlight, I'll do a more in-depth look at this, but I wanted to highlight there are a lot of differences between this and the steel. So obviously I have the Steel Panda Daytona, and when I was sort of like play testing and throwing this on my wife's wrist to see whether or not it would fit, it looked quite correct. It looked all good. Meanwhile, when we tried on a few Daytonas at the AD, I wasn't so sure about that for the gold. I mean, it just seemed a little bigger, and we weren't quite sure if it was really the right thing. And a lot of people do note that the gold Daytona precious metal looks bigger, but a lot of people put that down to like the almost quarter kilogram of gold that this is, sort of giving you an impression in your mind that this is a bigger watch. But if you look at this lug here and the distance to the bezel, you'll notice that you can actually see the crown. So you've got bezel, sorry, you'll see the actual case. So you've got the pusher, the case, and then the bezel, right? So the bezel is not overhanging the case, okay? So keep an eye on that. So this little piece of case that you can see just looking straight down, the bezel doesn't overhang. If you look at the steel, you'll see very clearly the bezel does expand further than the case, okay? And that's not an optical illusion. It does actually expand further than the case, and that's because on the steel, these lugs, this one and this one, are not actually equal size. On the right-hand side, the steel has a lug that is not symmetrical. It is actually a thinner lug, and hence the case is a little bit thinner on that right-hand side. And overall, just in that case dimension, I think you'd be wise to take, say, total size of this watch being the size of the bezel, which is 38.4 millimeters. I've done that on a caliper, and I'll do a more in-depth video, but clearly if you took the bezel size of the precious metal option, you're probably shy of the actual true size of the case by maybe a full millimeter. So I would say that this is probably 39.5 millimeters or something like that, because I think even on the left-hand side here, there's a little bit more of a bulge from the case. So this is probably closer to being a true 40 millimeter, or at least just shy under 40 millimeters, while the steel Daytona is very much 38.4 millimeters. I don't think you could justify that the case was wider than the bezel in looks or in reality. So yeah, this is literally a smaller watch. So yeah, I'll go into a little bit more depth on these differences in a dedicated video, so please like and subscribe. Those will be coming up. So yeah, what can I say? Certain things are moving and shaking, and or I'm just getting very, very lucky. But what isn't luck is that I'm qualified again, I'm not blacklisted. And just to clarify, the blacklist is there not as a way of saying I've done something bad. It's just that my purchase history no longer qualified for getting GMTs or Daytonas anymore. But I guess I'm good again and lucky. All right, until next time, see you around.